mountains tremble?
Did you feel the mountains tremble? Did you hear the oceans roar? When the people rose to sing of Jesus Christ the risen Lord. Did you feel the people tremble? Did you hear the singers roar? When the people rose to sing of Jesus Christ the saving one. We can see that God, you're moving, mighty river through the nations. Young and old will turn to Jesus. Fling wide you heavenly gates, prepare the way of the risen Lord. Open up the doors and let the music play. Let the streets resound with singing. Songs that bring your hope and songs that bring your joy. Dancers who dance upon injustice.
Did you feel the darkness tremble?
Did you feel the darkness tremble when all the saints join in one song? All the streams flow as one river to wash away our brokenness. And here we see that God, you're moving. Time of jubilee is coming. Young and old return to Jesus. Fling wide you heavenly gates. Prepare the way of the risen Lord. Open up the doors and let the music play. Let the streets resound with singing. Songs that bring your hope and songs that bring your joy. Dancers who dance upon injustice. Open up the doors. Open up the doors and let the music play. Let the streets resound with singing. Songs that bring your hope and songs that bring your joy. Dancers who dance upon injustice.
Yes, Lord. How about Lord, I Need You on page 16?
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is born. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, no
16.
My righteousness, oh God, now I need you. So teach my song to rise to you. When temptations come my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My righteousness, oh God, how I need you. Lord, my one defense, you're my righteousness, oh God, how I need you.
King of Kings is on the top of that page. We're going to speak a little bit about it, Israel and its meaning. King of
Kings and Lord of Lords, glory, hallelujah. King of Kings and Lord of Lords, glory, hallelujah. Oh, Jesus, Prince of Peace, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, Prince of Peace, glory, hallelujah. King of Kings and Lord of Lords, glory, hallelujah. King of Kings and Lord of Lords, glory, hallelujah. Oh, Jesus, Prince of Peace, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, Prince of Peace, glory, hallelujah. One more time. King of Kings and Lord of Lords, glory, hallelujah. King of Kings and Lord of Lords, glory, hallelujah. Oh, Jesus, Prince of Peace, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, Prince of Peace, glory, hallelujah.
That song. Can you go into more about it? As for like how old that song is and
I don't know how old that song is. It's just in the Hebrew tradition of singing more, the Messianic tradition of, and it's just saying, "King, you are the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords," and it's an exclamation of praise, and a praise to Jesus as Messiah and Prince of Peace.
sounds like a pretty old song.
It's got that old vibe to it. I think that's the thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder.
Revelation
how long
song
it's been
okay
being
too?
Yeah, let's do
18.
in the church.
Page 18, Revelation song. Holy, holy is he. There's just a typo there.
Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is
wonder, awestruck wonder.
Filled with wonder, awestruck wonder, at the mention of your name. Jesus, your name is power, breath and living water, such a marvelous mystery. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, I will adore you. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, I will adore you. Yes, we will adore you, Lord. All the glory is yours.
Who is worthy like you, Lord, to receive praise, you who serve every one of your subjects with love? We are your children. What king is like that, Lord? We call you the king. You are the king who is worthy of all praise, who transforms, brings renewal. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for forgiving our sin. Yes. Through the blood of your Son, looking on us, justifying us, looking on us as perfect through him, cleansing us, transforming us. Lord, we come together in your name, thanking you for the grace you give and the peace that you give. Thank you, Father. May your heart swell with joy as you hear the praises of your children coming up before you like an offering of incense. There's a song on 17 Fernando Ortega did. I don't know how many of you know it, but someone requested it at our prayer meeting the other day, and I don't know if I can even play it, but I really like it. When the morning comes on the farthest hill, I will sing his name, I will praise him still. When dark trials come and my heart is filled with the weight of doubt, I will praise him still. For the Lord our God, he is strong to save from the arms of death, from the deepest grave. And he gave us life in his perfect will, and by his good grace I will praise him still. Isn't that cool? Again, when the morning comes on the farthest hill, I will sing his name, I will praise him still. When dark trials come and my heart is filled, I will break down, I will praise him still. We exalt you. We exalt you. We exalt you. Oh Lord, we exalt you. We exalt you. We exalt you. Oh Lord. And now you're exalted. You're exalted. You're exalted. Oh Lord, you're exalted. You're exalted. You're exalted. Oh Lord. Genesis 32, 22 to 32, where Jacob wrestles with God, if you're familiar. If you're not, that's great too.
What was it, Genesis what? 30?
Genesis 32 and 22 to 32. Hey, Mitzi. Maybe somebody could read that really loud. Is the camera on so that the people at home will be able to hear it?
How many verses?
22 to 32. 10 verses.
Now he arose that same night and took his 2 wives and his 2 maids and his 11 children and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent across whatever he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of his thigh, so the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." He said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him and said, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been preserved." Now the sun rose up upon him just as he crossed over Peniel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore to this day the sons of Israel do not eat the sinew of the hip which is on the socket of his thigh, because he touched the socket of Jacob's thigh and the sinew of the hip.
Thanks, brother. Father, speak to us, I pray. Israel. One of the things that my sons and I like to do is wrestle with each other. Sometimes one of them will come up to me and just start going after me, and we'll go and we'll just go at it, for a while, and then the other two will very rarely let one just wrestle. The other two will come. Even Big Johnny will come, and that usually means I'll get taken down now. But we have a lot of fun doing that. And it's kind of, I think for boys too, there's kind of a measuring kind of thing where you're trying to figure out how strong you are and all that jazz. I don't know, maybe ladies went through that too. But I was raised third of 3 boys, so I don't know much about it yet.
Only girl, 2 brothers.
Girl has to deal with it, huh? So yeah, if you're a sister of brothers, then maybe you know something about that. But we enjoyed it, and the boys know, we got smiles on our faces. We know this is going to be fun. And I really believe there's something of the heart of the Father there with his kids, that he just enjoys wrestling. And I get that from the text here. Let's look at it. 22 and 23 looks like he tests out the ford of the Jabbok to see if it's climbable, and then he sends his family over. He sends over everything he has and his family, and he's left alone because he's afraid. He wants to send them forward because he's afraid of his brother Esau. You know the situation? His brother wants to kill him. And he's afraid of his brother, so he figures he's going to treat his wives and his kids better than he'll treat him. So he sends them forward first. The dirty fellow. He gets afraid, and so he sends them up, and then he's alone. And then it says this man comes when he's alone and wrestles with him until the break of day. Now just consider this now. He's in his tent, he's alone, and this man comes in and just starts wrestling with him. All right? And he's like, what? And then he starts wrestling back. Now, what that tells me is that God wanted to wrestle with his son. And maybe I'm projecting a little bit of my father heart, but I think that's from the father heart of God. He just comes in there and he just goes, all right, Jacob, come on, come on. And Jacob's like, yeah, come on, and they go for it. And they're at it, you know? And it's God in human form. Does that sound familiar to you? It sure sounds familiar to me. That sounds like Jesus, pre-incarnate. God appears in human form and wrestles with his servant Jacob, like his servant is his son. Starts a rumble with him. Sure enough. And here's the weird thing, and this I think is a little picture of the incarnation. God becomes man in every way here because Jacob can take him down. You remember Philippians 2. He, being God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself like a servant, made himself a man, and really, in a sense, it's saying in every way. And here God comes and goes man to man with Jacob, and Jacob is able to prevail against him, man to man. Do you notice that? God is sort of stooping down to Jacob's place. He meets us where we are at, doesn't he? And he wrestles. And Jacob wrestles with him. I don't know that Jacob fully understands who this is yet. And as Jacob is prevailing, God in human form uses his divine power to break his hip. And you might say, you know, all of a sudden he used his God power on the guy and overtook him. Just a little reminder to Jacob of who you're dealing with. Yeah, you can, when I become man to man with you, you can take me, but just remember who I am. Boom. All he does is touch his socket and he gets dislocated. Now at this point, a lot of wrestlers are going to stop and go, oh! Jacob doesn't stop. Jacob clings with a broken hip to the person he's wrestling with and keeps wrestling. Maybe that's why God did it, because he knew he would. And they keep going. How long do they go? Did you catch that?
The sun rises.
Till the sunrise. I don't know when they started, but I don't know if you've ever wrestled, but that's a long time to hold on and keep going. I remember one of my best friends lost a ping pong match to me, and when we were just out of high school and he had to wrestle with me, we wrestled for hours, and we were so exhausted we both gave up. And they kept going till sunrise, and they're both, in a sense, exhausted. Isn't that interesting? At least that's the implication. God in human form says, let me go, for the day has broken. And he said, but Jacob said, I'll not let you go unless you bless me. So he knows this is more than a man. And this is the guy that from the womb, if you know about Jacob, he tried to take his brother's heel. And he took his brother's birthright. And he took his brother's inheritance. And he would go after stuff. And that doesn't necessarily make him a righteous man. It just means that's his personality. In fact, part of that isn't good. He was known as a deceiver. A guy who would take stuff. by deception. And here he is taking, going after it. And then God responds to that. He says, "What is your name?" And I think this is important. When Simon, I should say, meets Jesus really and tells Jesus who he is, you are the Son of the living God, the Messiah. Jesus then turns to him and says, "You've been called Simon, but I'm going to call you Peter, the rock." In these places where we meet God, the way we respond to God shows who we really are. Your identity is given you as a son by Jesus, by the Father, or a daughter. Who you say that Jesus is going to show you who you are. The way that Jacob responds to God here shows Jacob who he really is. God already knows his name. What's your name? He says, Jacob. Then he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and men and have prevailed. Israel. He strives with God, that means in Hebrew. He strives with God. And in this case, prevails. It says, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, deceiver, Jacob means, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asks, what's your name? He wants to know who he's dealing with, because I think he has a hunch of that who this is now. And the response of God in human form is, why is it that you ask my name? Kind of like, you know who I am. And there he blessed him, is all it says. I think primarily the blessing is giving him this name. Israel. Now, the people of God would be defined by this word from thereafter. The people who wrestle with their God, the people who strive with their God, are God's people. It is not because Jacob was a perfect man and did things right and not other things he didn't do. It was that he had faith, that he responded to God when he was at Bethel. He said, this is surely the house of God. He responded to God in faith while he was doing things that weren't so great, but God would break him. And over time, he would make him into the man that he was meant to be. So the grace of God gives us righteousness, declares righteousness over us, and changes us. So that by the time Jacob becomes an old man, what does Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, know him for? He's got a staff in his hand, probably because he's got a broken hip still. And he's praising God on that staff. God broke him where there was sin to make him into the man that he was meant to be. So that at the end of his life, he would lean on a staff, remembering God broke me, and praised the Lord. Praise his God. And that's what he's remembered for, a man of faith. They could have remembered him for all the bad things he did, but the writer of Hebrews by the Spirit remembers him, for he was Israel. He strived with God and prevailed. He was a man of faith and overcame by faith. So we are not people who've done it all perfectly. So we are not looking at it going, oh, I've got this right and that. I'm not doing that, so I'm good, and I'm doing this. Some of that's okay, but it's not just about behavior modification. It's about knowing God, coming before him right now in the season of your life. And let me say, not in a way that is irreverent. You're dealing with God. So when we say wrestle with God, when we encourage each other to wrestle with God, I'm not encouraging you just to be flagrant and say, we're just buddies and we're on the same level. He'll come down to your level, but you're dealing with God. So remember that when you're wrestling before him. But by all means, wrestle before him. in the season of your life. Come before him with what you're feeling, with what you're going through, with what you're struggling with your doubts, with your sin, with your anger. Remember, you're dealing with God. But nonetheless, you got to be honest with him. And you got to bring it and let him deal with you. He'll work with you. He loves to wrestle. I think our daddy is more interested in the process than some end that we're interested in. Often we want to have it come to this point where we go, okay, I've arrived and everything's well. But you'll notice something about how he deals with you. He'll keep working you in the process because he loves to wrestle. He loves the process itself because he loves the love relationship he has with us. And he keeps doing that and keeps carrying us on in those things as we go through them. If you read the Acts passage, you know he's worthy of fear. Ananias and Sapphira lied to the Holy Spirit and were struck down dead. If you've read the Job passage, you know Job was also willing to come before that God and tell him what was on his heart. And he didn't sin with his lips in what he said, even though he said some pretty hardcore stuff if you read the book of Job, if you're in that reading. But Jacob's disability would always remind him of God's faithfulness. And to keep clinging to God because God will bless me. And he will. Because of Jesus, we're not destroyed, and we will see the face of God. Peniel in Hebrew is the face of God. By faith, we'll see it with our hearts, with the eyes of our hearts, and someday see him fully, even as we are fully known. So you folks and I are living by faith. The works we do flow from that place. We're not trying to get God to love us. We're wrestling before him because he loves us. And we want to know him more. Let that be our motivation. Does anyone have anything then from the Lord? That is what I have, and I pray the Lord blows on that, edifies us.